Chapter 8, the one where Danny realises he's dying. Danny has been investigating a dodgy football academy, but it's gone wrong. His best friend Charlotte has been kidnapped and is about to be taken out of the country along with dozens of England's finest footballers. The plane they're about to take off on, Danny is taking a risk and putting an obstacle in its path. The plane seemed to skip on the runway as it moved towards Danny. The brakes, he thought, the pilot must have hit the brakes. But the huge machine was speeding towards Danny, and because it was nearly upon him, he sprinted to the left, diving at the last moment onto the grass on the edge of the concrete. Then he heard the smash and looked to see the plane veering towards a staircase, clipping its wing, the staircase skittering noisily across the runway and the plane coming to a halt. Danny had stopped the plane but not damaged it. It could probably still take off. He sat up. What now? Could he get inside it? He had a few seconds, maybe more, to do something now the plane was stationary. He had to try. Danny stood and walked towards the plane and saw to his surprise that the back door was opening. He longed to see Charlotte, to save her at least, but it was Mills who stared down on the runway at Danny, and he was grinning. "Nice try, Danny," he shouted. "We'd love to stay, but there's a friendly country that's going to let us live a life of luxury once we've sold a few of these players, so I'm afraid it's goodbye now." Danny walked towards Mills. He might be able to get his hands up to the plane and lift himself up, get at Mills. The next few seconds seemed to move in slow motion. Mills raised his hand pointing at Danny, then there was a flash and Danny felt like someone had slide tackled him from behind. Finally lying on the ground, he registered a loud bang. What was going on? Danny looked at his leg. Where he'd felt it, he'd been kicked. He saw his trousers were torn away and his calf was red and white. Then he felt the pain, a violent pain that flung him back onto the grass, and he knew that he'd been shot. Arching his back in agony, Danny was aware that the plane was in motion again, leaving. He tried to move, but the pain made him throw up again. Now he felt weak, horribly weak, and he wondered if he was going to die. Could you die from being shot in the leg? Next, Danny saw lights, like Christmas lights. They were on the ground, getting larger and larger, and some coming from the sky, and his pain seemed to be fading. And then he thought, was this what happened when you died? Lights, weakness, pain fading. But he could see the plane moving, its silhouette shapes against the lights, and he could hear something, sirens and the thwack 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 of a helicopter. Was it the police? And that was Danny's last memory of the runway in the night. Danny was at the football again, but this time he was standing with the help of a crutch, a huge white pot on his leg, and this time it was United FC's training ground, surrounded by woods and what looked like a stately home. Charlotte was next to him, steadying him with her arm. Not that he needed steadying, but it felt okay. City were losing 3-1, but it didn't matter. It was still 10-3 on aggregate after the 9-0 last week. And the really important thing for this match was that United had their defence back. Connor and Ronan in United shirts again, defending well, playing alongside Jake and Tomasz. Danny smiled. This was his first day out of hospital. When he woke in the ward the morning after he'd been shot, Charlotte was sat with him, and the next morning. On the first morning she told him what had happened in the plane. Once the pilot had seen the 7 police cars, the 2 helicopters bearing down on the plane, he had decided to surrender. Mills and Adams were less keen to give up. They had opened the side door to the plane and tried to jump onto the runway. They could have been successful, but trying to do it at the same time had brought their downfall, literally. Colliding as they scrambled out of the door, they both fell badly and both broke 2 legs, an arm between them. The police picked them up easily. This left the pilot and 2 thugs on the plane, with 23 of the UK's most talented footballers. They surrendered, and that was it. During a quiet passage in the game, Charlotte turned to Danny. "So what now, superhero?" she asked. "You stopped half a dozen evil footballing masterminds. There's no one left." "There will be," Danny said, "and we'll be waiting." And as he did, his crutch slipped and he nearly fell into the mud. But Charlotte steadied him. "Thanks," Danny said. "No problem," Charlotte replied, smiling.